A bride refused to pay my final invoice, so I exposed her demands on the big screen. Then her groom handed me cash and filed for annulment. My name is Rachel, and I have planned over 200 weddings in the last 5 years. I know how to handle crying brides, drunk uncles, and even rain on an outdoor ceremony. But I had never met a client like Tiffany. She was the kind of person who treated service providers like servants and believed that the customer is always right meant she could walk all over anyone in her path. When she booked me for her dream wedding at the Grand Oak Estate, I thought it would be a standard, albeit high-maintenance job. I was wrong. 2 days before the wedding, after I had spent months coordinating every detail, Tiffany looked me in the eye and told me my work was amateur hour, and that she wasn't paying the final $3,000 invoice. Most people would have panicked or begged. I didn't. I simply smiled, pulled out our signed contract, and told her that since she was unhappy, I would happily accommodate any last-minute changes she wanted to make. What she didn't realize was that those changes came with strict logistical rules that she had ignored for months. By the time the guests arrived, Tiffany wasn't just unpaid. She was standing alone in a half-decorated hall, realizing that her greed had just cost her the perfect day she had dreamed of since childhood. To understand why I reacted the way I did, you have to understand the reality of being a wedding planner in the mid-2020s. It isn't just about picking flowers and tasting cakes. It is a high-stress logistics job where you are the buffer between a couple's dreams and the harsh reality of budgets, vendor schedules, and venue restrictions. I run my business, Rachel's Elegant Events, out of a small but organized office in the suburbs. I pride myself on being fair, transparent, and incredibly detailed. My contracts are 30 pages long because I have learned the hard way that if it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. Tiffany contacted me in January for a June wedding. From the very first consultation, the red flags were there, waving like neon signs. She arrived 20 minutes late, didn't apologize, and immediately started criticizing the sample centerpieces I had set up. "These look cheap," she said, pushing a vase of white lilies aside with a manicured hand. "I want something that screams luxury, but I'm not looking to spend luxury prices. You're the expert, right? Make it work." I took a deep breath and reminded myself that my job was to manage expectations. I explained that high-end luxury materials come with high-end costs, but I could suggest some creative alternatives that fit her budget of $15,000 for decor and coordination. She waved her hand dismissively. "Just make it look expensive. I don't care how you do it." Over the next 4 months, Tiffany became a nightmare of micromanagement and contradiction. She would email me at 2 a.m. demanding changes to the seating chart, then call me at 8 a.m. to say she liked the original version better. She insisted on using a specific caterer who was known for being unreliable, despite my warnings. When I suggested a more reliable option, she accused me of trying to pad my commission by steering her toward my friends. The truth was, I recommended vendors based on their track record, not my personal relationships. But Tiffany saw conspiracy everywhere. Her fiancé, David, was a quiet, mild-mannered man who seemed to shrink whenever Tiffany raised her voice. During our joint meetings, he would often look at his phone or stare out the window, clearly uncomfortable with her aggressive tone. Once, when I pointed out that her chosen color scheme, neon pink and electric blue, would clash horribly with the venue's classic beige tones, Tiffany snapped, "You're supposed to be the creative one. Stop telling me what won't work and just make it happen. If you can't handle my vision, maybe I should find someone who actually has talent." David finally spoke up then, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "Tiff, maybe we should listen to Rachel. She knows the venue." Tiffany shrugged him off. "Don't start, David. I'm handling this." Despite the stress, I kept my professionalism intact. I documented every single request, every change, and every approval via email. I sent her weekly updates and asked for written confirmation on major decisions. She rarely replied to the emails, preferring to send vague voice notes that contradicted what we had discussed in person. I saved all of them. I knew that sooner or later, this lack of documentation would come back to haunt her, but I hoped it wouldn't come to that. The breaking point began 2 weeks before the wedding. We had a final walkthrough at the Grand Oak Estate. The venue was beautiful. A historic mansion with large gardens and a grand ballroom. Everything was on schedule. The florist had confirmed the delivery times. The caterer had finalized the menu, and the lighting technician had mapped out the setup. Tiffany arrived with a new friend named Jessica, who seemed to encourage Tiffany's worst impulses. As we walked through the ballroom, Tiffany stopped in the middle of the floor and frowned. "This feels empty," she said. "I want more draping, like ceiling-to-floor velvet drapes in gold, and I want the tables moved closer together so it feels more intimate." I pulled out my tablet and showed her the floor plan we had approved 3 months ago. "Tiffany, the venue has a strict capacity limit. Moving the tables closer would violate fire safety codes, and the velvet draping wasn't in our original contract. That would be an additional $2,000 for material and labor, and we'd need to hire a specialized crew, which might not be available on such short notice." invoice. Tiffany rolled her eyes. You're always talking about money. Can't you just add it? I'll pay you later. Just make it look good. If you don't do this, I'm going to tell everyone how difficult you've been to work with. I have a lot of influence in this community, you know. It was a thinly veiled threat. She wanted free upgrades and was using her social status as leverage. I remained calm. I can certainly look into the availability, but I cannot proceed without a signed change order and payment. That's company policy, she scoffed. Policy? You're hiding behind policy because you're lazy. Fine, do what you want, but don't expect a good review. I left the meeting feeling uneasy. I knew Tiffany was testing boundaries, trying to see how much she could get away with. I updated my files, noting her request and my response. I didn't install the drapes. I didn't move the tables. I stuck to the approved plan. 3 days before the wedding, I sent Tiffany the final invoice for the remaining balance of $3,000. This covered the coordination fees and the final vendor payments that I had fronted on her behalf. I expected her to complain, but I didn't expect what came next. She called me while I was at the venue doing the final setup checks. Her voice was icy. Rachel, I've been looking at the photos from the engagement party you helped coordinate for my cousin. Honestly, your work is amateur hour. The lighting was off, the flowers looked wilted. I'm not paying this invoice. In fact, I'm considering asking for a refund for what you've already done. You've ruined my vision. I stood there, holding a clipboard, surrounded by boxes of linens. I took a deep breath. Tiffany, I'm sorry you feel that way. However, the services rendered were according to our signed contract. The invoice is due upon receipt. If you have specific concerns, we can discuss them. But non-payment is a breach of contract. I'm not paying for mediocre work, she snapped. And if you think you're getting that money, you're crazy. I'll see you at the wedding. Try not to mess it up completely. She hung up. I stared at my phone. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a strange sense of clarity. She had just declared war. She wanted to humiliate me by not paying and by bad-mouthing my work. She thought I would beg or cry. She thought I would scramble to fix things to save my reputation. But I knew something she didn't. I knew the contract inside and out. And I knew that Tiffany had made several verbal requests throughout the planning process that she had never paid for or formally approved. Requests that were physically impossible to execute without proper notice and payment. I didn't call her back. I didn't send an angry text. Instead, I went back to my office and pulled up our 30-page contract. I turned to Section 4. Clause C, client requested changes. It stated that any changes requested within 72 hours of the event that deviated from the approved plan would be subject to availability and a 200% rush fee. Furthermore, Section 8, Clause A stated that if the client withheld payment, the planner was under no obligation to provide additional services beyond the baseline contract. A slow smile spread across my face. Tiffany wanted to play games? Fine, I would play, but I would play by the rules she had signed. I picked up my phone and sent her a single, polite email. Dear Tiffany, I am sorry to hear that you are unhappy with my services. Since you have withheld payment and expressed dissatisfaction with the current plan, I want to ensure your wedding day is exactly what you envision. Please send me a list of any final changes or adjustments you would like to make to the decor, layout, or timeline. I will do my best to accommodate them, provided they adhere to venue policies and contract terms. Best, Rachel. I hit send. Now the ball was in her court, and I knew exactly what she was going to do. Tiffany couldn't resist the urge to control everything. She would send me a list of impossible, last-minute demands, and when she did, I would be ready. The email I sent was a calculated risk, but I knew human psychology well enough to predict Tiffany's response. People who feel entitled and believe they are being wronged rarely back down. Instead, they double down. They want to assert dominance, to prove that their will is superior to rules, contracts, or logic. By offering her the chance to make final changes, I wasn't just being polite. I was handing her a rope, waiting for her to hang herself with it. I didn't have to wait long. Within 20 minutes, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Tiffany, copied to her fiancé David and her friend Jessica. The subject line was in all caps, "Final demands for my wedding." I opened it, taking a sip of my cold coffee. The email was a masterpiece of delusion. Rachel, since you clearly don't understand luxury, here is what needs to happen by tomorrow morning. Move all tables to the center of the room to create a runway effect for my entrance. Replace the white linens with black velvet tablecloths. I found some online, I'll send you the link. You need to pick them up and iron them. The DJ needs to change his entire playlist. I want only 90s R&B, no exceptions. Remove the standard lighting and install purple uplighting on every single pillar. Move the cake table to the entrance so guests see it first. Add a chocolate fountain to the dessert area. Do this, and maybe I'll consider paying half of what I owe you. If not, I'm posting about your incompetence on every local wedding group on Facebook. I read it twice, then I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the dry, cynical laugh of someone who had seen this movie before. Every single request she made was either physically impossible, contractually prohibited, or logistically disastrous within a 24-hour window. Let's break down why her demands were absurd. First, moving the tables to the center to create a runway would reduce the seating capacity by 40%. We had 150 guests confirmed. If I moved the tables, 50 people would have nowhere to sit. The venue manager, Mr. Henderson, had explicitly stated in our initial meeting that fire codes required specific aisle widths. Violating this would shut down the event immediately. Second, black velvet tablecloths. She had linked to a website where they were sold. I checked the shipping info. Estimated delivery, 5 to 7 business days. It was currently Thursday evening. The wedding was Saturday afternoon. Even if I drove to the city to find them in stock, velvet requires professional steaming to look good. Ironing velvet at home ruins the fabric. And picking up, transporting, and setting up 15 heavy velvet tablecloths in less than 24 hours was not part of my coordination fee. It was a full-scale production job. Third, the DJ. Her DJ, Mark, was a professional who had provided a curated playlist months ago, which Tiffany had approved. Changing the entire genre to 90s R&B last minute meant Mark would have to scrap his prepared sets. Most DJs charge a significant fee for last-minute playlist overhauls because it requires extra preparation time. But more importantly, Mark had told me earlier that he didn't have a large library of 90s R&B in his current digital setup. He specialized in modern pop and classic rock. Asking him to pivot entirely was unrealistic. Fourth, purple uplighting on every pillar. The venue had 12 massive stone pillars. We had rented 4 uplights for the stage area. To light every pillar, we would need 8 more units, plus extra cabling and technicians to install them safely. The rental company closed at 5 p.m. on Fridays. It was already Thursday night. Fifth, moving the cake table. The cake was a 3-tiered custom creation from a high-end bakery. It had been delivered and set up in the climate-controlled kitchen earlier that day to ensure it didn't melt or collapse. Moving it to the entrance, which was near the main doors where the temperature fluctuated, was a recipe for disaster. The baker had specifically warned against moving it once at 6, the chocolate fountain. We hadn't ordered one. Renting one, buying the chocolate, melting it, and setting it up required a vendor. No vendor would come out for a single item on less than 24 hours notice without charging an exorbitant emergency fee. Tiffany wasn't just asking for changes, she was asking for miracles, and she expected me to do it for free. Or rather, for the promise of maybe paying half of what she already owed. I didn't reply immediately. I wanted to let the weight of her demands sink in. I wanted her to sit in her confidence, believing she had bullied me into submission. Instead, I called Mr. Henderson, the venue manager. Hi, Mr. Henderson. It's Rachel. I need to verify something regarding the fire code for the ballroom layout. If a client requests moving tables to the center, reducing capacity below the approved limit, what is the protocol? Mr. Henderson sighed. Rachel, you know the rules. We can't allow it. If the aisle width is compromised or the capacity is exceeded, we have to stop the event. It's a liability issue. Why? Is Tiffany trying to change the layout again? She is, I said calmly. I just wanted to be sure before I responded. Stick to the contract, Rachel. Don't let her push you around. We've had issues with her before during the site visit. She tried to move a fire extinguisher because it clashed with the decor. We had to put it back. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Mark, the DJ. Mark, hypothetical question. If a bride demanded a complete genre switch to 90s R&B tomorrow, could you do it? Mark laughed. No way, Rachel. I don't even have those files loaded. And even if I did, I'd charge a $500 rush fee for the reprogramming. And honestly, the acoustics in that hall aren't great for heavy bass tracks. It'll sound muddy. Thanks, Mark. Just checking. Next, I called the lighting rental company. They were closed, but I left a voicemail asking for a quote on 8 additional uplights for a Saturday morning pickup. I knew they wouldn't be able to deliver in time, but I needed the paper trail. Finally, I drafted my response. I kept it professional, cold, and strictly factual. I didn't use emotional language. I didn't accuse her of being unreasonable. I simply stated the facts as they existed in the real world. Dear Tiffany, thank you for your detailed list of requested changes. I have reviewed each item against our signed contract, venue policies, and vendor availability. Here's the status of each request. Table layout. Moving tables to the center reduces seating capacity to 110 guests. We have 150 RSVPs. This violates the venue's fire safety code. Section 3.2 of Venue Agreement. Mr. Henderson has confirmed that this layout will not be permitted. The current layout remains as approved. Black velvet tablecloths. The items linked have a 5 to 7 day shipping time. Professional steaming and setup require 48 hours. As this request was made less than 24 hours before the event, it cannot be fulfilled. The approved white linens will remain. DJ playlist change. Mark has confirmed that a complete genre switch is not possible without a 5-day notice period for library preparation. Additionally, a last-minute change incurs a $500 rush fee, payable directly to him. Since payment has been withheld, no additional services can be authorized. The approved playlist will stand. Purple uplighting. We have 4 uplights allocated for the stage. Adding 8 more requires a new rental order. The rental company is closed and cannot fulfill a next day order. The current lighting plan remains. Cake table location. The baker has strictly advised against moving the cake due to temperature stability risks. Moving it to the entrance voids the freshness guarantee. The cake will remain in the designated climate-controlled area. Chocolate fountain. This item was not in the original contract. No vendor is available for next day service. This request cannot be fulfilled. As per Section 8, Clause A of our contract, since the final invoice has not been paid, I am only obligated to provide the baseline services already agreed upon and paid for in the deposit. Any additional requests that incur costs or violate policies cannot be executed. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Best, Rachel. I hit send. I knew this email would infuriate her. It stripped away her illusion of control. It showed her that her threats meant nothing against a solid contract and professional boundaries. But I also knew she wouldn't give up. Entitled people don't accept no. They just try harder to force a yes. The next morning, Friday, I arrived at the venue early to oversee the final setup. The team was working efficiently. The flowers were fresh, the linens were crisp, and the lighting was soft and elegant. It looked beautiful. It looked exactly like what we had planned for months. At 10 a.m., Tiffany arrived. She wasn't alone. She brought David, Jessica, and her mother, Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable was a smaller, quieter version of Tiffany, but with the same sharp eyes. They marched into the ballroom like they owned the place. Tiffany stopped in the middle of the room and looked around. Her face fell. Where are the black tablecloths? Where is the runway? I walked over, clipboard in hand. Good morning, Tiffany. As per my email last night, those changes weren't possible due to shipping times and fire codes. The room is set up as per our approved plan. She scoffed. You're lying. You just don't want to do it. I'm calling the venue manager. He'll listen to me. She pulled out her phone and dialed Mr. Henderson. I stood there, calm, watching her pace. When Mr. Henderson answered, she put him on speakerphone. Mr. Henderson! This is Tiffany. My planner is refusing to make simple changes to my wedding. She's being difficult. I need you to tell her to move these tables and put up black cloths now. There was a pause on the other end. Then Mr. Henderson's voice came through, clear and firm. Ms. Tiffany, I've spoken with Rachel. The layout you're requesting violates fire safety regulations. We cannot allow it. The current setup is final. If you attempt to move the tables yourself, we will have to ask you to leave the premises. Please respect the venue's rules. Tiffany's face turned red. This is outrageous. I'm paying customer. You haven't paid the final balance, Mr. Henderson said coolly. And even if you had, safety codes are non-negotiable. Goodbye. He hung up. Tiffany stared at her phone, stunned. For the first time, her authority had been publicly challenged and dismissed. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. You think you're so smart, don't you? Hiding behind rules. I'm just following the contract, Tiffany, I said softly. Which you signed. She turned to David. Do something. Tell her. David looked uncomfortable. Tiff, maybe we should just let it go. It looks nice. Really? It does not look nice, she screamed. It looks cheap, and I'm not paying for cheap. She stormed out of the ballroom, followed by her mother and Jessica. David lingered for a moment looking apologetic, then hurried after them. I took a deep breath. Phase 1 was complete. She was angry, humiliated, and desperate. Now came the hard part. She wouldn't just accept defeat. She would try to sabotage the event herself, and I had to be ready for that. I walked over to my assistant, Lisa. Keep an eye on the entrance. If Tiffany or her family tries to touch any equipment or decor, stop them politely but firmly. Record everything if necessary. Lisa nodded. Got it. Do you think she'll try something? Oh, absolutely, I said. People like Tiffany don't know how to lose. They only know how to escalate. I was right. At 2 p.m., while we were doing the final sound check, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of the venue's main power box, located in the back hallway. The caption read, "Accidents happen. Hope your lights work." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just going to complain. She was going to destroy the event. She was threatening to cut the power. I didn't panic. I called Mr. Henderson again. Mr. Henderson, I need security at the back hallway near the power box. Immediately. There's a threat of tampering. On it, he said. 10 minutes later, 2 security guards were stationed by the power box. Tiffany wouldn't be able to get near it, but her threat revealed her mindset. She was willing to ruin her own wedding to spite me. That was dangerous, and it meant I had to take one final step to protect myself and the integrity of the event. I pulled out my phone and recorded a short video message. Not for social media, but for legal protection. I documented the current state of the venue, the signed contract, and the timeline of events. Then I sent a final email to Tiffany, David, and Mrs. Gable. Dear all, due to recent threats regarding venue infrastructure, security has been increased. Please note that any interference with venue property will result in immediate removal by law enforcement. We are committed to delivering the event as contracted. Any further attempts to disrupt the service will be documented and reported. Regards, Rachel, I hit send. The trap was set. The walls were closing in. Tiffany thought she was fighting a weak planner. She didn't realize she was fighting a system designed to protect itself. And tomorrow, when the guests arrived, she would learn that lesson in the most public way possible. Saturday morning arrived with a sky the color of washed-out denim, threatening rain but holding off just enough to keep the mood light. The Grand Oak estate was bustling with activity. Florists were placing the final touches on the centerpieces, the catering team was setting up the buffet stations, and the sound system was being tested for the ceremony. Everything was running like a well-oiled machine. It was beautiful, elegant, and exactly what we had planned for months. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. Tiffany had not responded to my last email. Silence from someone like her was never a good sign. It usually meant they were plotting something drastic. I kept my team on high alert. Lisa was stationed at the entrance to monitor the guest list, and I stayed close to Mr. Henderson, ensuring that security remained tight around the critical infrastructure areas. At 11 a.m., the bridal party began to arrive. David looked nervous, constantly checking his phone. Tiffany's mother, Mrs. Gable, arrived with a stiff smile, avoiding eye contact with me. But Tiffany herself was nowhere to be seen. Her hair and makeup team was set up in the bridal suite, waiting, but the bride was missing. At 11:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was Tiffany. Her voice was shrill, panicked, and loud. Rachel, where are you? I'm at the venue, and everything is wrong. The lights are white. The tables are round. This is a disaster. I walked calmly toward the bridal suite, where I knew she would be. Tiffany, everything is as per the contract. We discussed this yesterday. I don't care about the contract, she screamed. I want my wedding. I want my black tablecloths. I want my runway. If you don't fix this right now, I'm canceling the whole thing. I'm telling everyone you ruined it. I entered the bridal suite. Tiffany was standing in the middle of the room, still in her robe, her hair half done. Jessica and Mrs. Gable were there, looking equally agitated. Several bridesmaids were huddled in the corner, looking uncomfortable. Tiffany, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. You cannot change the physical layout of the venue 3 hours before the ceremony. It is physically impossible. The guests will be arriving in 30 minutes. You need to get ready. No, she shouted. I'm not getting ready until you fix this. I'm calling the police. I'm calling the news. I'm going to make sure no one ever hires you again. She pulled out her phone and started recording me. Look at this, she yelled into the camera. This incompetent planner has ruined my wedding. She refused to do basic things. She's holding my day hostage. I didn't flinch. I didn't try to grab the phone. I simply stood there, hands clasped in front of me, and spoke clearly for the recording. Tiffany, I have fulfilled every obligation in our signed contract. The request you made yesterday violated fire codes and shipping deadlines. I documented all of this in emails sent to you, David, and your mother. You are free to show those emails to anyone who asks. Her face twisted in rage. You think you're so smart? Well, watch this. She turned to her bridesmaids. Everyone leave. We're not doing this. I'm not walking down that aisle in this mediocre setup. Tell the guests to go home. Tell them Rachel screwed it up. The bridesmaids looked at each other, confused and scared. One of them, a young woman named Emily, stepped forward. Tiff, please. David is outside. The guests are parking. You can't just cancel now. Watch me. Tiffany snapped. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the suite, followed by her mother and Jessica. The bridesmaids remained, looking at me with wide eyes. What do we do? Emily asked. Stay here, I said gently. Get ready. The wedding is still happening. David wants to get married. Let's focus on that. I left the suite and walked out into the main hall. The first guests were beginning to arrive. They were dressed in their finest, smiling, chatting, and taking seats. The atmosphere was warm and joyful. And then Tiffany appeared at the top of the grand staircase. She wasn't in her wedding dress. She was still in her robe, her hair messy, her face red with anger. She marched down the stairs, ignoring the gasps of the guests. She walked straight to the center of the room where the microphone stand was set up for the officiant. David ran after her, trying to grab her arm. Tiffany, stop! What are you doing? She shoved him away. Let go of me. This is a sham. This planner has ruined everything. Look at this place. It's cheap. It's ugly, and she won't give me what I paid for. The room went silent. 200 guests stopped talking. They looked at Tiffany, then at me, then at the beautiful, elegant decor that filled the room. I walked over to her, maintaining a professional distance. Tiffany, please step away from the microphone. You are disrupting the event. I'm not disrupting anything, she yelled. I'm exposing the truth. Rachel is a thief. She took my money and gave me nothing. She refused to put up black tablecloths. She refused to move the tables. She's lazy and incompetent. A murmur went through the crowd. People were pulling out their phones, not to record me, but to record her. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I simply pulled out my tablet, which was connected to the large projection screen behind the stage for the slideshow. I had prepared a backup presentation just in case. Since you are making these claims publicly, I said, my voice amplified by the nearby sound technician who had quietly turned on the mic. I think it's only fair that everyone sees the facts. I tapped the screen. The slideshow changed. Instead of romantic photos of the couple, it displayed a series of documents. Slide 1. The signed contract with the clause regarding client-requested changes highlighted in yellow. Slide 2. The email chain from Thursday night showing Tiffany's impossible demands, black velvet, runway layout, etc. Slide 3. My response, detailing why each request was impossible due to fire codes, shipping times, and vendor policies. Slide 4. The venue's fire safety regulation document stating that the runway layout was illegal. Slide 5. The shipping confirmation for the black tablecloths showing a 7-day delivery window. The room was dead silent. Guests leaned forward, reading the screens. They saw the dates. They saw the times. They saw the logic. They saw that Tiffany had asked for things that literally could not happen in 24 hours. Tiffany stared at the screen, her mouth open. That's fake. You forged those. Mr. Henderson stepped forward from the side of the room. Ms. Tiffany, those are the actual emails sent from your account, and the fire code regulations are public record. You were warned yesterday that moving the tables was illegal. You chose to ignore it. David walked up to the screen looking at the emails. His face went pale. He turned to Tiffany. You told me she was just being difficult. You didn't tell me you asked for illegal changes. You didn't tell me you threatened to cut the power. Tiffany spun around. David, don't listen to her. She's manipulating you. No, Tiff, David said, his voice shaking but firm. I read the emails. You tried to break the law. You tried to ruin the venue. And you haven't even paid her. I saw the invoice. You owe her $3,000. The guests began to whisper. The judgment in the room was heavy. Tiffany wasn't the victim. She was the villain. She had tried to bully a professional, break safety rules, and cheat on a bill, all while throwing a tantrum in her bathrobe at her own wedding. Tiffany stammered. She looked around the room, seeing the disappointed faces of her friends and family. She saw Jessica backing away, embarrassed to be associated with her. She saw her mother looking at the floor, ashamed. This is my wedding, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. I deserve to be happy. You deserve to respect contracts, I said softly. And you deserve to treat people with decency. You got neither. Tiffany let out a sob, turned and ran back up the stairs, disappearing into the bridal suite. The door slammed shut. The room was awkward for a moment. Then David stepped up to the microphone. He looked tired, but resolved. I'm sorry, everyone. This has been difficult, but I still want to marry the woman I love, even if she's having a moment. I hope you'll stay. The food is paid for. The band is ready. Let's have a celebration. He looked at me. Rachel, thank you for keeping everything together. I'm sorry for what she did. I nodded. It's not your fault, David. I'll ensure the rest of the day goes smoothly. The guests, relieved that the drama was over, began to clap. The tension broke. The band started playing a soft jazz number. People returned to their seats. The wedding went on. Tiffany did not come back down for the ceremony. She stayed in the suite until the reception was halfway over. When she finally emerged, she was in her dress, but the joy was gone. The wedding was hollow. David went through the motions, but the spark was extinguished. They danced the first dance in silence. They cut the cake without smiling. At the end of the night, as the last guests were leaving, David approached me. He handed me an envelope. This is the full payment, plus an extra $500 for your trouble. I'm filing for annulment on Monday. I can't be with someone who acts like that. Thank you for showing me who she really is. I took the envelope. I'm sorry it ended this way, David, but you deserve better. He smiled, a sad but genuine smile. Yeah, I think I do. As I packed up my equipment, I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. I hadn't sought revenge. I hadn't tried to humiliate her. I had simply held the line. I had protected my business, my reputation, and the integrity of the event. Tiffany had destroyed her own day with her entitlement and lack of respect. All I did was turn on the lights. Walking out of the Grand Oak estate that night, the air felt crisp and clean. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove home. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't brag to my friends. I just knew that I had done my job, and I had done it well. And sometimes that is the best revenge of all. Tell and comment in which city are you watching my stories.